As IU continues to pursue another guard, another ball handler, another scorer in the transfer portal, there is one big name that we haven't discussed that could still be an option for the Hoosiers.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody. You are Locked On Hoosiers, the only daily IU podcast, and we're part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcasts, including over on YouTube. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Of course, I am Jacob, your host. We have a really big announcement to start off today's episode. Locked On and SiriusXM are now partners, which means you can listen to Locked On Hoosiers on the SiriusXM app. For those of you that have SiriusXM, we just made it a whole lot simpler for you to be locked on every single day. That also means during the season, you guys can catch all of the IU football and basketball games over at the SiriusXM app or on SiriusXM. All you have to do is search Hoosiers over there. So big news for us. Even more ways now to get locked on every day. Indiana has been searching a lot for another guard, another ball handler, another scorer to fill a pretty big void on this team in the final stages of the transfer portal. There's one name that entered the portal a while back. The Hoosiers reached out to. I didn't really discuss it because it was a name that had ties to another school, pretty strong ones. It's Rayj Dennis, a name I'm sure some of you have seen or heard. He is a guard from Toledo. He was the MAC Player of the Year last season, all MAC first team, all MAC tournament team with Toledo. He averaged 19.6 points per game last season. He entered the portal. IU reached out. The reason we didn't discuss it is it felt like a foregone conclusion. He was immediately going to race to Illinois, and that would be where he played next season. It is entirely possible he still ends up at Illinois. But some time has passed. He hasn't committed to Illinois, and reports are starting to come out that he is working on official visits, plural, with an S. It's unclear if IU is going to be in that group, but since he's not sprinting to Champaign, I figured it's worth us at least talking about who he is and why he makes sense for the Hoosiers. In a lot of ways, he fits the profile of the guards that we've talked about a number of times in recent days and recent weeks. As I mentioned, he was the MAC Player of the Year. The Hoosiers were just reaching out to the Ivy League Player of the Year, both of them guards. With Dennis, as I said, 19.6 points, 5.8 assists, 4.3 rebounds per game. Certainly a point guard, 28.3 usage percentage last year. He was tasked with being the playmaker for Toledo. A 32% assist percentage is pretty wild, if I'm being frank. That is such a high number. And it shows the burden that was placed on him offensively. Maybe not the burden, the responsibility he was given offensively. And he excelled at it. Toledo was pretty strong last season. That usage rate is just a tick below what Trace Jackson Davis's was last season. Trace led the team in assist percentage at 24.8. Again, Dennis was at 32.2. So obscenely high relative to what the Hoosiers saw last year during the season. Xavier Johnson technically was higher than that, but everything with him is a really small sample size, so not a ton you can take away with that. Dennis is the type of player the Hoosiers have been targeting, have been going after, that lead ball handler, that kind of second point guard to put on the floor, and someone that can knock down shots. Last season, he shot 48.5% from the field, 36.5% from the three-point line, It was by far the highest 3-point percentage of his career, 32% before that, and then he had never cleared 30 before that. But it was also on the most volume, so it wasn't like it was a fluke of a season necessarily. His volume went up and his efficiency still went up. So this is a scorer through and through. This is a scorer. His effective field goal percentage was 53% last year. He's an efficient scorer, someone that had the ball a lot, that scored the ball a lot, and IU needs that. IU needs exactly that type of player. If we look at Evan Mia, the advanced numbers over there, he was a fantastic offensive player, not a great defensive player. His position is listed at a 1.4, which means he did play some shooting guard, but his role was a 1.1. He was absolutely a creator for this Toledo team last year. Relative to Indiana, he would have been the best offensive player based on their ranking. He would also have been the worst defensive player. I've mentioned a couple times that I don't put a lot of value into their defensive numbers, really their offensive numbers either, because of, I mean, they have traces like a middle of the pack defender for IU last season, and we obviously know how good he was. I would argue he was the best defender in the Big Ten, regardless of the fact that he did not win the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year award. But Dennis is someone that would come in and immediately make a huge impact offensively. I mean, they rate him, Evan Mia, they have transfer portal rankings as the top offensive player projected for next season. That has been in the portal full stop. Over Hunter Dickinson, over Harrison Ingram from Stanford, over all these guys from wherever you might remember, or anyone that the Hoosiers have been linked to. Jordan Dingle is about 15th on that list as well. Dingle is the Ivy League Player of the Year from Penn that the Hoosiers reached out to. So IU clearly understands that it needs to get some offense in here. And both those guys we've mentioned have very similar roles and what they did last season. As much value as Xavier Johnson's going to bring to this team, IU knows it needs other guys to come in and be able to create offensively for the Hoosiers next year. And they're very much targeting that and trying to find that type of player. So both those guys make sense in that regard. Like I said, ultimately, even if he takes visits elsewhere, Dennis is going to be heavily favored to Illinois throughout this process. You're fighting an uphill battle, but just get a foot in the door and we'll see how things progress for the Hoosiers, and we'll see if they can do anything and make some headway. So I would say the Hoosiers are far behind in this, but the fact that it's still open and he hasn't went anywhere, I just wanted to discuss him because it is someone Indiana reached out to that I just kind of let fall by the wayside because I didn't think it would even get this far. So there's interest, there's intrigue, but it is a long shot. On the topic of getting another guard in here, there's a player way back at the start of all this that the Hoosiers reached out to. He committed elsewhere, but that might be changing. We'll talk about who that is and what the situation sounds like it could be here in just a few moments. First, I want to talk about Built. I did not bring the bar in here. I had one in the other day. But I picked up some Built bars at Sam's Club recently. That's one of my favorite aspects of Built, is that you don't even have to wait for them when you order them online anymore. They're available at Walmart. They're available at Sam's Club. You guys know how much we love Built over here. They are healthy and they taste amazing. The flavors they have are incredible. I have churro and brownie batter puff currently with the 13-bar box I got from Sam's Club. Cookies and cream has been a favorite. Peanut butter brownie, I know a lot of people love. You guys can try them all out today. They're covered in 100% real chocolate, but there is no catch. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein. They still are healthy for you on top of tasting amazing. So Head to built.com, head to Walmart, head to Sam's Club, wherever it may be. Try out some Built Bars, and you can thank me later. Thank you guys for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every day. Everydayers, next week on the show, I promise we will start talking about season recaps. I know I teased these. These I just kind of put in the back pocket, and when we have a slow news day, I pull them out. Once the transfer portal closes, once IU uses up its last scholarships, we're really going to dive into these, and I'll want to hear some of your insight into the players as we look back on their seasons in Bloomington. So be on the lookout for those. I would assume that news is going to slow down, and IU is going to start filling those openings, and we'll be able to start really diving into those here in the future. I'm sure you guys remember way at the beginning of this transfer portal nonsense, Indiana reached out to Caleb Love, and it was the move that took all the headlines early on, and the Hoosiers ended up not really being a factor. Love ends up going to Michigan, and it felt like that was that. Why else wouldn't it be? The situation was done. It was dusted. He was playing for Michigan. However, there are increasing rumors, and right now I want to make that very clear. They are just rumors, but increasing rumors that he might be decommitting from Michigan. I don't know the entire situation. There have been some tweets suggesting that he could be decommitting, some cryptic tweets that could be interpreted as such. It's come from people who have been right a number of times during this transfer portal process. I'm not bringing this up from Joe Schmo 173645 on Twitter with 7 followers. It is people who have been right for a number of transfers during this spring, but it's a rumor right now and nothing really more than that. But it is a rumor that raises an eyebrow because obviously Love fits the MO of what the Hoosiers have been looking for, even if he was a divisive, I guess would be a good way of wording it, player to consider. Even back then, even when he entered the portal, the Hoosiers are in a bit different situation now. The portal's drying up a little bit, relatively speaking. Indiana's missed out on a number of targets, a number of guards, which kind of begs the question, would IU get back in the mix if Caleb Love decommitted from Michigan? If he's not going to Michigan, then I would have to imagine the two front runners are Indiana and Missouri. He's from St. Louis, Missouri, and so that one is always going to be a name considered. But what would it's an interesting question. It wasn't even sure a certainty that Indiana should have gotten involved the first time around. This is a player with an awkward fit, and we talked a lot about that back then. You guys can listen back to that episode if you want more thoughts on how him and Xavier might fit together. It wouldn't be seamless. There are certainly better fits. Both Dennis and Dingle, I would say, would be better fits. Guys we've talked about today and earlier this week. But he is a ball handler. He is a guard. He is a playmaker. And those are all boxes that are ticked that the Hoosiers need in the kind of in the backcourt on the perimeter right now. The question is that bridge burned? Nothing is suggesting that the Hoosiers couldn't get back involved, but they were involved when he came out of high school and he didn't commit. They were involved when he entered the transfer portal and he didn't commit. How many times do you keep trying to put yourself out there and not getting him? Do they want to keep expending resources on that when we've seen how many guys are recruiting on the high school trail right now? We've seen how many people they're recruiting in the transfer portal right now. Do they want to add someone like Love to that to see if he'll commit when they've been spurned by him twice? Is he worth all this? Like I said, I don't even think he's the best fit. We're getting closer to a point where the Hoosiers can't be picky about who they bring in. I don't think we're quite there yet, but the names are drying up to a certain degree. Can Indiana afford to say, no, we don't want him, even though he's clearly a talented player? All these are things they have to take into question, take into account if this happens. And this is still a big if, but Caleb Love is such an interesting player, such a big name, and this was a situation that seems like there's smoke. And if you want to believe where there's smoke, there's fire, be my guest. But it is something I wanted to mention. Let me know whether on Twitter, whether on YouTube, whether in the podcast reviews, would you go after Caleb Love even after all this? I think I probably would, but I would be a little bit more hesitant. I would tell him, listen, are you serious? Are you really considering Indiana? And he can give whatever answer he wants, but I'd make it clear that he just can't keep doing this and expecting Indiana to come chasing. Maybe he doesn't, but I would lay some ground rules in the situation and try to see how serious he is about all of this. That'll be a story to monitor as well for you everydayers next week. If anything happens there, we will certainly catch you up on the latest on that too. Let's cap off this episode in this week by a fun story. You guys know about, I'm sure many of you, the basketball tournament, TBT. Well, there is a soccer version of that IU is going to have a team in the coming weeks. We'll get you some details on that, who's on the team, things like that. We'll do all that here in just a moment. I'm sure many of you guys are aware of TBT, the basketball tournament. That's literally what TBT stands for. They have created a soccer version of that. It's called, shockingly, TST, the soccer tournament. It is something that begins in the coming weeks, and it will. It starts at the beginning of June. June 1st is the first day. So we still have about 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. I bring it up today because they did the drawing for the groups and all of that. So it is really kind of becoming a reality in that regard. And also the Hoosiers have a team in it. The team is called Hoosier Army. It's full of IU alumni. And Todd Yeagley is the quote unquote GM. There's familiar names on here. You can head to the website and look. I'm not going to name all of them. What I would say are some of the standout names. Louis Softner, goalkeeper. He was a rock for the Hoosiers. Joshua Gatt at forward. Patrick Duty, a defender. Thomas War, Ryan Wittenbrink. Certainly have heard about him. Tanner Thompson. There's a lot of names on here that I'm sure IU soccer fans will remember, but it's a team full of IU alum. And it's unique because there's a lot of different teams in this tournament. You have a lot of professional teams. So the group that Indiana is in includes Borussia Dortmund, a Bundesliga team, a team in Germany, an actual first division team. Now, they're not going to be sending first division players over. A lot of those teams, Dortmund is in it, West Ham from the Premier League in England, Charlotte FC from the MLS. Those teams are going to be sending like staff and like legends associated with the club and stuff over and things like that. But there are various other teams in this. There is a U.S. women's team, which is comprised of former USA women's players led by Heather O'Reilly, a name that some of you might remember. there is a Natty SC for Cincinnati that has Chad Ochocinco on the team. There are a lot of interesting teams in this. Wrexham, that was the other one I was trying to remember. I know a lot of you know who Wrexham are and have seen that TV series that is really good and a must watch. So there's going to be a lot of big teams in this. It's similar to how the basketball tournament goes. It's similar to the World Cup. There's group play. This is a 7-on-7 tournament. This isn't an 11-on-11 tournament, which is going to make all of this happen very quickly. This whole tournament lasts, I think, like a week. They'll play games on the first and the second, I believe. And then they go into knockout games, and everything is done in 4 days. It starts on the first, and it'll be over on the fourth. 7-on-7 it's a much, much, much smaller pitch, but they also, similar to how the basketball tournament had the elam ending and had some different rules. There's some wacky rules in the soccer tournament as well. They haven't all been out there. I've seen some of them mentioned. For example, every game will have a winner. There will be no draws, which I'm sure will appeal to a lot of you guys. The longer the game goes into basically overtime, a player will be removed from the pitch. And so eventually it'll get down to just a couple of guys left, which eventually a goal will be scored. So every game will have a winner. And this is winner take all for $1 million, just like the basketball tournament. There is no like certain amount for first, second, so on and so forth. This is first place gets $1 million. Everyone else gets $0. So that certainly adds to the drama of it as well. This will be streaming, I believe, and I'll mention it again once we get closer to it. But just a fun little thing that's happening in a couple weeks with certainly a pretty heavy IU tie-in. As best as I can tell, IU is the only college that is going to have a team. If you think back to the basketball tournament, they had a team in that as well. IU did for a couple of years. So IU is familiar with this kind of format and being a part of it. I'm excited to watch it. Like I said, we'll give you more details once we have them here in a couple of weeks, but be on the lookout for that. That'll wrap up today's episode. Thanks again, guys, for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every single day. Be sure you guys check out the SiriusXM app. That is really big news, really fun news for the Locked On Network, and certainly we'll be promoting that more this fall, this winter, when there's actual games on. Every day or next week on the show, we'll continue to have news on Mackenzie Mgbako's visit this weekend. We'll see if there's anything that comes of that, whether Caleb Love re-enters the portal, what new things might happen over the course of the weekend. We'll get you all caught up on that on Monday. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to it at. Look, y'all have given some quote-unquote constructive criticism over in the YouTube comments this week. Y'all have to look at my face. You can go subscribe on Spotify, subscribe on iTunes, whatever it may be, Overcast, whatever app you might use. You guys can use that and listen to us as well. You don't have to see my beautiful beard or my background or anything like that. Save you some outrage on that one. Leave a quick rating and review while you're over there as well. Appreciate all the support you guys have given us. Most importantly, everybody, hope you all have a fantastic Friday, a tremendous weekend. And as always, LEO.